And I mean, we've seen this, right? Nobody is exempt from challenge, from adversity, from obstacles. We all have it in our life. It's going to come sooner or later. That's what the 41 life is, though. Overcoming those challenges, overcoming those obstacles as they come at us and coming out stronger on the other side. So that's what we're here for. That's what we're about. We want to provide encouragement. We want to help people to keep going through those times, and we want to have some fun along the way. This is the 41 life. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, we are back. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving, and thank you guys for bearing with us as we took a little breather to be able to enjoy the holiday. It was definitely enjoyable. We had a lot of good food, and got to spend a lot of time with family, so I think all in all it was a win.
It was, and we were very, very busy.
Yes.
We had your mom here for 4 days at the same time as my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And then they all left. And then my other set of grandparents and my aunt and her family came in.
Mm-hmm.
So we had family in for over a week straight.
And on top of that, Devin had Black Friday.
Yes.
And so she was setting up for that and actually running that.
Yep.
And it was a whole family affair.
It is.
We were all there.
Everyone except my grandparents come and work.
Yep.
So
and it was good. We said this year felt like the most civil, smooth, like people.
I think the line was actually the longest this year than it has been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we got there were people wrapped all the way around the building.
Yeah, because we give out line cards, which is basically like a number, and you exchange your number for a free gift when you walk in, and we give out 100. And I passed out number 100 like pretty decently before the end of the line.
Mm-hmm.
So the line was probably like 150 people before the doors even opened.
Mm-hmm.
And it stayed steady pretty much the whole day.
Yeah.
But there's just an energy that's so fun. Like when we all get there at 5:30 and like we see like the people like waiting outside and like we're all like getting in our positions and getting our rotations ready and like we've all got our coffees and it's honestly it's so fun.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, well, that's why you own a boutique, and it's very much, I mean, right up your alley. And I think you were designed specifically to run a store like this, so everybody.
And I feel like I just have like some really, really sweet customers.
Mm-hmm.
Like that are just always so kind when they come in and so respectful. And I feel like no one was angry or pushing or shoving or anything, and it just was a really nice day.
It did just feel different than last year. I don't know, the energy was very different across the board. Last year it just seemed, like a little more chaotic. Mm-hmm. Customers came in,
which I will say this is my third Black Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I've learned little tips and tricks to make everything smoother and like things that I need to do to make things more organized, and I think a lot of it has to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, it was good. Thankfully, everything went smoothly, and it was an early morning. It was not fun hearing the alarm go off, but once we got there, it was good. Everything ran well. We got a nice nap in the afternoon, and then we ate some more food and watched some football and just hung out. So, I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving as well as we're talking about it, and maybe you got some good Black Friday deals of your own.
We're going to pick up where we left off 2 weeks ago, which was you in the hospital. You had just had your seizure.
Mm-hmm.
And we had kind of talked about how they wanted to scan your brain to make sure the cancer hadn't spread to your brain, that was what caused the seizure. So it was a little bit of anxiety waiting for that MRI to come back. But we found out that there was nothing in your brain. Thank God. And it just ended up being a side effect of one of your drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a question initially whether it was just a passing out, an episode of passing out, or if it actually was a seizure. And when we originally got there, the neurologist wasn't too concerned. I guess the scans and the brain activity, like testing and stuff they were doing, came back fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then somewhere along the line that shifted into, oh, you didn't just pass out, you did have a seizure. And so then we had to schedule some follow-up appointments and all that stuff. And thankfully everything, came out clear. I mean, it was pretty uneventful, after the seizure itself, and we found out everything was looking pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It did kind of open, I guess, the question, or the door to the question of, okay, what's going on here exactly? Because this, we knew that the medicine caused the seizure, but when question marks really started popping up was shortly after that. I think it was probably a month, maybe 6 weeks.
If even that. Because
Yeah.
it was a post-chemo scan, so that's normally what, like...
Anywhere from a month to a month and a half usually. And so I had this scan, and everything still was not kind of panning out the way that it was expected. And so at that point, we kind of had to pivot, but we didn't know what we needed to pivot to exactly.
Your oncologist was like, this is just not adding up.
Yeah.
Like, this is not adding up at all. So what he decided to do was send your biopsy from the previous winter, the one that you did right before you started that chemo regimen,
mm-hmm.
out to some other hospitals to get some second opinions on it.
Yeah, the guy that it got sent off to is pretty much I would say the national, maybe even international specialist in seminoma, non-seminoma, testicular cancer varieties, I guess,
mm-hmm.
Of basically what I had, and just wanted to get his opinion on what he was seeing, and their care team, maybe get some fresh eyes on it. And
I'm so thankful that your oncologist had the discernment to say,
mm-hmm.
this isn't right. Because he could have been like, well, sorry, it's just not working.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah. And thankfully that was not the case.
Yeah. I'm just glad that he was like, we need to investigate this. Something's not adding up.
Yep. And we knew from the previous biopsy, just seeing it on my chart, that there was some, I guess, weird findings that they weren't completely sure of, simply because they didn't know if it was chemo distortion. They thought it could have been a non-seminoma. One way or another, we knew, like I said, in a couple episodes ago, we knew we needed to do more treatment. And so we elected to do the follow-up, the secondary treatment, because it was presenting what they thought was a non-seminoma at the time. But now everything was kind of up in the air. And so the second
treatment
opinion
was not working.
Yeah. And so the second opinion was really necessary. And I should also add, at this point, I had decided, since I was home for a while and baseball wasn't happening, I had just signed up to do classes and go mm-hmm. back and finish up my degree. And it's kind of a weird thing, but I'm a biochemistry major. And so going through all of this in real time, in real life, was weirdly interesting to me, simply mm-hmm. because science, I think it's cool. That's kind of how our body works, is a big aspect of biochemistry. And so all of that, is happening at the same time that I'm doing the application process, getting enrolled in classes. And so pretty much at this point, I had just started summer classes, and I was doing, at Clemson. I was doing Physics 1 and Physics 2 over the summer. And so I think at this point I was kind of early on in Physics 1. Mm-hmm. And for anybody that knows, those are not fun classes, especially to take over the summer.
Physics was what made me change my major.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the classes, I was in there and I was like, am I supposed to know what he's talking about?
Yeah. I mean, not to mention online, it's even harder because, Clemson does a good job with the app that they use and the software to kind of share videos and upload your assignments mm-hmm. and everything. But that's just a tough class in general and tough to take online. So, that's happening. We get the stuff sent off to the second opinion, and we're pretty much told, okay, they'll be in touch with you, within 3 to 7 days.
We had a phone call set up.
Yeah.
We knew when he was going to call.
Yeah. And so I had a physics test 3 days after this phone call was scheduled, and I'm sitting there studying. I'm doing some homework, and we knew this call was coming. So I answered the phone, and we had no idea what to expect in this.
If you
Absolutely.
think the story has had some twists and turns,
Yes.
it's about to get more twisty and turny.
This might be the biggest twist of the whole thing, I think. So my phone rings, and Devin, she's like, "Oh my God, is that them?" Like, okay, let me prepare myself for a second. And
we were sitting at the kitchen counter,
and
I had like a little notebook out so I could like write down what he was saying so that we wouldn't forget.
Yeah, and like we said, if you thought that this had been a wild ride with twists and turns, this was probably the biggest one, because we had no idea really what we were expecting from this phone call. But when we answer, we started talking about baseball, and the doctor's asking me about, like, my professional life and this and that. And we're sitting on pins and needles. And then, he just kind of on a dime like shifts to, okay, so diagnosis wise,
he said what they originally thought was this, but what I found was something completely different.
And we were like, are you going to keep the anticipation going? Like, are you going to tell us
what is completely different? And he said, you have angiosarcoma.
Yeah. And we didn't know much about angiosarcoma, so of course, like everybody else, I think the first thing that probably was done is the old Google
you
machine.
Were still talking to him.
Yeah.
And when he said angiosarcoma, I immediately grabbed my phone and Googled angiosarcoma.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that pops up is very poor prognosis.
Yeah.
It has a 30% 5-year survival rate.
That's assuming
you have stage 1.
Yeah, that's assuming you don't have it in
and you
any other organs.
I don't even know it. I don't think we ever even talked about stages, but it was in your chest and in your lungs.
Yeah. So that pretty much dropped the survival rate, I'm pretty sure, down into like single digits. Yeah. We found out later on. And that was a very difficult moment. I mean, we just kind of sat there and like didn't really know what to make of what was just said to us. And of course, like Devin said, we're trying to understand, okay, angiosarcoma is not what we expected. We are clueless. Let's learn a little bit about this. And initially, when you look at the germ cell tumor, that's one of those things that's like, oh yeah, you're going to beat this. No big, like, just show up, do the work, you'll be fine. And 95+% cure rate, I think, if you look it up. And, everything was pretty optimistic. And then as soon as angiosarcoma was mentioned, everything went, right downhill.
Yeah.
And so we started feeling even more weight from that. And I mean, my first response, I don't think I even knew what to do. And I was like, okay, well, I got to go study for this physics test because in 3 days I still have to take this test regardless of, this happening right now. And
I remember you sat at your desk and studied physics, and like the desk is in our guest room.
Mm-hmm.
So I like laid in the bed and cried while you studied.
Yeah.
And that lasted for like hours because, I mean, it was just such a bomb to be dropped.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying, he said, the only way to beat this is to surgically remove it.
Yep.
Like he said, chemotherapy, radiation, immunotherapy, like nothing works. Stem cell, nothing works to treat this type of cancer. Like you have to surgically remove it.
Mm-hmm.
He said, so we're going to set you up with our surgeon. He's going to like look at your scans and all of this stuff. And, we'll go from there. And I remember I was like, you've got to call your oncologist.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've got to tell him what's going on. Like, I mean, I felt like we were just at a loss for, we just didn't even know how to exist.
Yeah.
Like in that moment.
Yeah. I think in that moment, like studying physics, I think was my coping mechanism.
I don't know how in the world you did that.
I don't think I retained a lot from that. But I think that I just somehow in my mind, I was just like, okay, well, we got to carry on. And, I think part of it was because to me, I didn't care if they told me on that phone call that you have a 0.001 chance of surviving or a 100% chance of surviving this. Like, I was just determined to be the one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a matter of how how difficult is this journey we're about to have to go on going to be? There was never a question of, will we beat this? Will I come out on top of this? It was just, again, like, what's it going to take to get to that point? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something a lot of people have asked me along the way, like, how have you been able to do that? And I really don't know the answer. I don't know if that's from being an athlete or if that's something that helped me as an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, like, that ability to just be able to put what's going on at the moment to the side and say, okay, like, everybody, like, hop on, we're going to the other side. It doesn't matter what we have to do to get there.
Yeah.
We'll fight and claw to get there. And so I think that mentality, I carried that with me from the beginning. I mean, we had a very good prognosis initially, and now we have a very poor prognosis, but um, I'm here. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? This was a year and a half ago, and we're talking about it now. I guess this is that moment where, like, it kind of comes into play that, like, no, for somebody listening to this, if you're in a position, whether it be with work and you're kind of stuck in a job, if you're going through a prognosis or a challenge of your own, medically, personally, financially, like, whatever it is, like, this is something that I've really been thinking about in the last couple weeks as I've tried to unpack this a little bit more. Don't let the odds dictate your work that you're putting in and where you want to go. Because a lot of times I feel like, we see these people that are, incredibly successful, quote unquote, whatever that success looks like. And almost everybody has the story of how hard they had to work to get there,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't talk about how the odds were stacked against them so many times on those journeys.
Yeah.
And so, whatever, like, you listening to this are going through, the same way that we went through stuff, the one thing that I've focused on that's helped me more than anything else is every day just try to get 1% better than you were yesterday. And that's a concept that I learned when I was in college playing baseball. We didn't call it 1%. I think it was like the 0.5% rule or something like that. And if you stack all those percentages by the end of the year by year, you're going to be in a better position. Like, so, and use that in different aspects on different focal points. If you want to be in a better financial position, well, focus on being 1% better each day. Maybe it's spending, $1 less on a meal than you would have originally. If it's going to the gym and being in better shape, like, just push yourself that extra little bit. And at the end of the year, those wins are going to stack up and you're going to be, I mean, it's not crazy math. You'll be over 350% better than when you started the year. And I know that's a little side tangent, but that's something that I've been thinking about a lot really in the last couple weeks because I've been having to embrace that a lot myself. Since treatment ended 2 months ago, I've been trying to get back in the gym. I've been running. I've been trying to make sure I'm doing any type of food, nutrients, like vitamins, things that I can to help my body. And so I'm actively doing that and seeing that. And it's really been productive and beneficial for me. So I know if it's doing that for me, it's going to do that for other people. So um, do with that what you will, I guess. But I just kind of, I don't know, I felt like that was something to share. And so um, with that, little good break in the story, I guess. We circle back, like Devin said, to the ways you remove or you get angiosarcoma cleared out is you surgically remove it, and then you do chemo afterwards to kill off anything that was left. But the big question right now, and I'll say, like, I feel like both of us were, like, completely shook when we got that news. I mean, we talked about it, like, I feel like that was so, like, ground shaking that we were just like, what in the, like, haven't we kind of been through enough to get, already? Wasn't this supposed to be done? And now this is happening? Like, what the heck, man? Come on. And so I think that not only were we doing that, the doctors were also doing that. Because now it's not just my oncologist that's part of this. We're bringing in a surgeon. We're bringing in a whole other side of things as well. And so I think that game planning for that, I think, kind of immediately happened. I think, like Devin said, we got on the phone and, talked with my oncologist a little bit, like, hey, what's your take on this? What are we doing? Like, what do we need to, prepare for? And we were, I think, in an appointment the next week with him and the surgeon to kind of go over what we were looking at and game planning to do. And the $1 million question at that time was, do we take the less risky surgery and then do chemo afterwards and hope that the chemo can get my chest stable as well? Or do we go in and there were two options. One was called a clamshell, and the other was pretty much an open heart surgery because of the location of the tumor. The clamshell, if I'm not going to get too graphic with it, but if you don't want to hear about it, then fast forward like 30 seconds. But it's basically an open heart surgery. So they cut down your sternum, but they also cut open along your pecs, the bottom of your pecs. And so you literally, like, you're pretty much opening up your rib cage and sternum to where they can have a full, operational setup there to go in and clear everything.
And the reason that they needed this angle was because it was in your chest, which it was really kind of interwoven around a lot of your arteries and vessels coming out of your heart.
Yep.
And it had spit into your lungs. So they really needed to see your lungs and your heart to be able to get all of these things out. Yeah. And I remember your surgeon, we were sitting in the office, and he said, I'm just going to be honest with you, the clamshell is the most morbid surgery you could have.
Yeah.
He said, this is a surgery that we do on car crash victims. And I just remember wanting to throw up.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was really helpful and really good, and he like wrote out on the board kind of like, I guess, some stats and just kind of like probabilities of different things and, all that.
And he was honest with us. Like he said, not to mention that the biggest hurdle will be, apart from removing all of the cancer, is you just making it off the table.
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard for you to make it off the table.
If I was to do either the clamshell or the open heart, that was, being generous, a 50-50 shot of me just making it off the table alive.
So we're in this situation where we're like, okay, you have this cancer that is going to take over your body.
If we don't do
something. So it will kill you. Or we can try to remove it with a surgery that will probably kill you.
Yeah.
Like that was the reality that we were living in.
And of course, like we said, that was going to be the more aggressive approach, but we felt like in that moment, we don't have a choice but to be aggressive with this. We have to hit this as hard as it's going to try to hit me. And
also we had an appointment with our Greenville surgeon, and then we had an appointment with a surgeon in Indiana to get his take on the whole thing. And, he basically just said, like, I don't see a way you survive a surgery where we can get all the cancer out. Either keep you alive and don't get all the cancer out, or we get all the cancer out, but you're not alive.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. And I remember you even said, like, well, we spoke with a surgeon here in Greenville who suggested the clamshell method. And he said, that's an option, but, it takes you right back to...
He pretty much said, if we do this operation, you will not make it off the table.
Yeah.
And if we don't do anything, then this is a very aggressive form of cancer that will kill you. Like we're kind of between a rock and a hard place here.
So once again, we get off the phone and I just cry and cry and cry.
At this point, this was probably one of the 2 or 3 times through this whole thing that I just broke down. I was like, this.
Well, we were just like, you're going to die. Like,
yeah. It's weird too, because I don't think I ever let myself go there.
Yeah.
Like I said, to me, I was like, I'll be the 0.1% of people, that make it through this. I don't care what you tell me, but I was just like, this is, in my mind, I was like, this is going to destroy my life. Because at the time, maybe it was wishful thinking, I don't know, but I was just like, man, I got to get back to baseball. Like, I got to.
Well, and also too, besides baseball, another thing with this surgery is they were going to have to remove the muscle that controls your diaphragm. Mm-hmm. So think about what your diaphragm does. You weren't going to be able to do that properly. And they were going to have to remove some vocal cords.
Yeah. And so they said there was a very possible chance that in that, that low probability that I made it off the table, they were like, you could potentially lose your voice, whether it be temporary or permanent. You could lose complete control of your diaphragm. With the diaphragm and, that controlling breathing and all that stuff, like I was going to just have difficulty breathing for the rest of my life. And, like I said, I was thinking, well, I got to get back to baseball. But I also started thinking, like, I want to be able to pick up our kids, like, when, one of these days when we have them, like, I want to be able to interact and engage with people and just be active and, not have these limitations. But that was very upsetting because I'm a very active person. And that felt like it was just stripping away a lot of, the things that I enjoyed to do. And all that to say, we were very upset about that. But thankfully, we did not have to do that. And that Devin said from the beginning, she didn't feel like we ever should have done that.
Surgery had been mentioned a couple times leading up to this, like even in the very beginning. And I had always said, I feel like if you get taken to surgery, you're not coming back. Like, I mean, did I not say that your entire journey?
Yeah, you were very against, not even surgery, but that particular surgery.
Open heart surgery. Yeah. Like, I just did not feel good about them messing around with your arteries and all that stuff. And so I remember even sitting there with your doctors, and I remember saying, I do not feel good about this. I do not feel good about this. Like, I really don't want to do this. Yeah. And, I think ultimately what we had decided was that we weren't going to do the clamshell. Mm-hmm. We were going to do open heart surgery and then later do the lungs, or we were going to do...
Well, so the game plan pretty much became no clamshell. That was off the table.
We decided that was just too morbid. Well, I remember at a certain point, they were trying to get a hold of this new technology from MD Anderson to robotically go into your lungs. And it was like less invasive and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And we were like waiting to hear about that, but the time it was going to take for our doctors to get a hold of that technology, we didn't have that time.
Right. And so we much
had to push that aside.
Yeah, we landed on, let's go ahead and knock the big stuff out first. Like, we're going to have to, do the open heart surgery. We're going to have to take those chances, and then we'll do chemo afterwards, and then we'll hit the lungs, and we'll see where we're at after everything. And so the lead up to that, one big thing was needing to rescan, because and this is not that long after the previous scan. I mean, we're talking just weeks afterwards,
couple weeks, 3 weeks,
because this needed to be acted on quickly. And so I've never had this done before until this point, but And I felt awkward even when this was mentioned or, kind of started. But Devin's mom, and I think maybe your dad, your family in general, but I think your mom said it first, was like, I think that we need to have the church, like the elders in the church, pray over you. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know. Like, that's a little like... they're praying for me now. We'll just stick to that. She's like, no. I feel strongly about this.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but this Sunday at church, something about the worship, my entire family was bawling.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the whole church was like probably looking at us.
I mean, we were all crying. Okay? We were all crying because we had just gotten this news, and your big surgery was scheduled for the following week, and like, it was so heavy. Yep. Like.
And so I remember we get done, and the way that our services work is we'll do worship, and then we'll go into the message, and then afterwards it's kind of like a final prayer. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week. Thanks for being here. If you need anything, we have the prayer team and some elders down here at the front of the church. We're here and we're available. So your mom, I mean, before I even thought about anything, any of us, she grabbed my arm and said, "We're going right now." And I was like, "Okay." Like, sounds good. And we get down there, and I mean, man, we just have such a good church family.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, everybody was so aware of what was going on and like so involved with it. And it was like, they've just been incredible through this.
Yeah.
And the person who ended up praying over us, you know, was somebody that I had gotten to know through like the men's retreat and stuff. And he, like, we had gotten to know each other pretty well. And so, you know, we go up there, and of course this is, and it helped me because I felt more comfortable in this situation because I knew him and I knew we were close. And so,
and they anointed you with oil.
He was, well, yeah. And he was like, "What can we do for you?" And we laid everything out, and he was like, "Okay, hold on a second." And I was like, what's going on? And they're like, "Okay, so we're going to bring the entire prayer team and the 2 pastors of the church, and we're all going to pray over you. And we're going to lay hands on you, and we're going to uh, do the oil anointing." I'm there. I'm about to get prayed over. And like I said a couple episodes ago, I get uncomfortable opening Christmas presents in front of people. So this is like, I mean, I'm sitting there just like, "Whew, okay, everything's all right. Stay calm. This is all right." And so we have the elders in the church, the pastors that are at our church, all praying. Like, it, I mean, it was a really, I mean, honestly, for me, it was one of the most like humbling, cool moments, I guess, because I was just like, wow, like these people, like I said, we have a great church, and I've had great church families growing up as well, but it just like something about it hit me, and I was like, I've been in and out of here because of baseball over the years, and like, you know, really we've been able to settle in since baseball hasn't been on the table as much right now. But I was like, they don't know me that well yet. Mm-hmm. I'm getting to know them very well, but they just are caring so deeply. And it was just a cool way to see kind of, you know, the way the church is supposed to operate. Mm-hmm. And it meant a lot to me. I know it meant a lot to, you know, our family in general. Yeah. And this is another one of those moments where we talked about we'd had some experiences, and this was one that I had, and Devin also had one that she can talk about in a moment with this. But as this is happening, I noticed there, and I still to this day have, I don't know who this lady was. I've never seen her since. I've never seen her before, but there was this lady there standing behind me, and I hear her saying the whole time, "He can and he will."
Yeah.
And I
just over and over.
Yeah, on repeat. I mean, literally the whole time. Like her hand was touching the base of my neck, and it was a smaller hand, so I could tell it was hers, like a woman's hand. And it was at the base of my neck, on my spine, and I just kept hearing over and over and over, "He can and he will. He can and he will." And so I was like, man, that was cool. And so, you know, we get done with the service, we get done with the prayer, and we're eating lunch, I think, at this point.
But this was right after, you know, you'd been prayed over. I remember your mom was in town because you're getting ready to have big surgery. And my family was there, and we were just like, "Did you hear that lady, like, speaking in tongues?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wonder what she was saying. And then you just popped up, and you were like, "I know what she was saying."
Yeah, I was like, "Did nobody else hear that?"
And you were like, I don't know how, but I know what she was saying.
Yeah.
She was saying, "He can and he will."
Yeah.
And you had interpreted the tongues.
Yeah, like, I'm pretty sure everybody like just lost it in that moment.
Well, we were just basically like, "Oh my gosh, like you knew what she was saying." I was like, "David, you interpreted tongues?" Like,
yeah, no,
I was like, that's like a huge thing, like that you knew what she was saying. Like,
yeah, like I said, I had never had any type of experience with that or anything, and I was just like, "What do you mean? Like, somebody else had to hear this?"
Yeah.
And we didn't hear
her say "he can and he will" at all. We only heard her talking in tongues. But you heard the tongues and "he can and he will."
Yeah. And I started to kind of second guess myself, and I was like, well, I mean, I heard her just saying that over and over and over again. And you guys then said, yeah, she was saying the same thing on repeat.
But it wasn't anything we knew what she was
Yeah.
saying.
And I was just like, huh, okay, well, that's wild.
Yeah.
And so that was my experience.
And then I also had an experience. I had a vision, which I think I've shared before that I've had like a couple visions, but this one was like so vivid and so emotional. And I don't even think I told you guys until a little bit after, because I just was thinking about it and I was like, did I really see that? Like, do I tell somebody about it? Like, I just was replaying it in my brain over and over again. But during the prayer, I was in the throne room, like God on the throne, Jesus on the throne, like just gold, bright lights everywhere. And I just was sitting on my knees, just crying. And I am sitting there, and the ground starts shaking underneath me in the throne room. Mm-hmm. And it's like an earthquake in there. And so I get up and kind of start running away. And I look back, and right where I was sitting, the ground cracks open. And underneath the crack is the sky. And out of nowhere, it was hundreds and dozens of not hundreds, it was hundreds of these creatures, I don't even know, diving out of the throne room down into the crack. Mm-hmm. And I knew what was happening was that God was sending an army down to earth. Mm-hmm. That's just what I knew was happening. And then I came out of it. And it was the most insane experience. Mm-hmm. It's hard to explain, honestly. Obviously, I can explain to you what I saw, but I can't explain to you what I felt. And we both had those experiences during the prayer. Yeah. And I think we both felt renewed strength after that. We were okay, we felt like God has made his presence known. Yeah. We were going to face this.
Well, and I think that was, looking back, I think that was kind of the purpose of that. Mm-hmm. I don't think God operates in coincidence. I think that he knew in that time that we needed, like you said, some type of encouragement, some type of reassurance. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily know that everything's going to work out perfectly, but just that he was there.
It's a lot easier to face things when you know he's with you.
Yeah. And I didn't even take it as, complete healing is going to come or anything like that. I knew that he was capable of it. Yeah. But, and especially, when I was hearing what I was hearing, and later on hearing what you said about it, and, your vision, your experience as well, it more than anything just served, I think, for both of us as a reminder that God's here and his hand's in it. Mm-hmm. Whatever happens here, we can just trust that his plan was at work and that he was there comforting us and walking with us through it. Mm-hmm. And, that prayer, the whole time we knew, going into this surgery, we knew that this scan was just going to be a mapping of everything. We weren't looking ahead to anything change happening.
We were praying for you to survive the surgery.
That's exactly what it was.
That's all we were praying for. Yeah. We were we're in this boat, help us get through the hurricane.
Yeah. And that's all we thought it was going to be. We were buckled up and we were getting ready to go. And that, I think, is where we're going to have to stop for this week. Leave you guys on another cliffhanger. But next week, we will pick up with the scan. We'll lay out what that looked like and
our pre-surgical appointment.
Yeah, and the even surgery. More unexpected news that may or may not have come from that. You'll have to tune in next week to hear more about it. And I think that it'll be something that you don't want to miss. Yeah. And yeah, with all that, we, as always, we appreciate you guys being here with us. Like I said, sticking with us after taking a week off. Continue to interact with us, to do the ratings, do the reviews as we approach the end of the year. those things more and more, I think, stack up and help us just to be able to kind of see what you guys are engaging with, what you like, what you don't like. And as we've said before, it allows us to kind of shape things in a way that makes it a little bit better for your listening experience. So continue to do those things, and we'll continue to be here with you guys. But with that being said, we hope you guys have a really great week. I'm David.
And I'm Devin.
And this has been The 41 Life.
See y'all next week.